And now, a board game review from me, Joe Sallen.
You're watching the Sallen Coefficient, a new and nuanced approach to board game reviewing by a core gamer for core gamers. Ever wondered what they mean when they say fun, or good, or bad, or awesome? At the Sallen Coefficient, I will tell you more to help you make up your mind about whether or not a game is worth your time.
Sponsored by Game Surplus, bringing the world of board games to you at GameSurplus.com.
Hi folks, Joe Sallen here of the Sallen Coefficient, a video review series in which I give you two ratings for every game. One that's my personal rating that I don't want you to apply to yourself necessarily, and then the other one which I do think is more applicable to different play styles than just my own personal experiences. All reviews are subjective, but what I'm trying to do here is pull apart and compare games to other games of its type and whatnot, place them among and try to get at least ideas from others aside from myself, and discuss those ideas before I really come up with an overall opinion on a game. So the Sallen Coefficient is going to compare the positive aspects of the game and the negative aspects of the game that I can kind of identify as being something that I think is a good board game design. And then my personal rating will also then be like, how excited am I basically to play this game? In most reviews, you get just that. You get the I'm so excited for what, for this thing, but you don't really get the like, okay, let's talk about all of the different aspects of this game and how they compare to other games like it. So anyway, today's review is going to focus on Steamrollers. Steamrollers is just exactly what its title says. Right now it is steamrolling across game groups. And what I mean by this is just that like when one person sees it played, usually it gets busted out again at the same game night. It gets players who are heavy gamers will look at it and see similarities to the Age of Steam game, which is a 15-year-old classic game about developing rail companies. But the most controversial part of that game, and the one that rubs new players either the right or the wrong way, depending on how you feel about it, is the board and the way that you block other players, and that the building is very cutthroat. And so for that reason, like all the other game systems tend to allow players like different sorts of ways to cheat the system and get the right connection outside of the normal structure of a round of Age of Steam, which is very deterministic. So you have auctions in that game. Steamrollers looks to take the delivering aspect of Age of Steam and then allow all players to build track of their own. It's implied that you're all in the same continent sort of area, or the same connected landmass, and that you are delivering the same goods, but you're using only your own private railway companies. So if you can see where this is heading, it's taking Age of Steam, which is somewhere on the borderline between not just a modern Euro classic, but also economic game classic. It is a heavier economic game that is still very widely respected and has a decent amount of accessibility. Well, Steamrollers takes away any of the economic aspects of the game and focuses primarily on the Euro aspects of getting the action you want via dice drafting. And so it feels, for that reason, like as an experienced gamer, I look at all the pieces in this puzzle that make it come together, and I see things I've seen done elsewhere, and things where it might be that I actually prefer the way that they're done in a different place. But for specifically Steamrollers, it's reducing the entry level to being like a half-hour, 45-minute game. Turns go quickly. It's got pieces that are very functional. You can just, when you're done, you just flip your thing over, and then, it just put your cubes back in the bag. It's one of those games where I've played it multiple times without putting it all away, or at least wanted to play it multiple times, even if I didn't, because it is just so easy to teach people, so accessible to players. But it still has that sort of beginning of round puzzle that you get from Age of Steam, where all the cubes are going to be out on the table, and you're not going to necessarily, you're going to know from the beginning what's available. And in that aspect, it's actually better than Age of Steam for determinism, because in Age of Steam, some cities will be repopulated with cubes, but it really depends on a handful of a dice roll. And so that's one thing that rubs players wrong about Age of Steam. Well, you don't even have that randomness here in Steamrollers. Instead, you have much more of a central piece of randomness being what you have to decide. So roll and write games, which is what a lot of people compare this to. It's like Age of Steam meets a roll and write, and they're correct. There's no denying that. But like when I think of roll and write games, almost all of them that I've played in the past have been like clones of Yahtzee. I'm trying to get this. This is like the ideal roll, and the only thing between me and the ideal roll is the dice that I have to I want to get all of them to be this symbol. So, and if I accidentally only get half of what I need, then this is going to be a really bad turn. So there's always like a big risk reward. Steamrollers is a roll and write where it doesn't feel like there's that much of a risk reward element. It's more like you're trying to figure out what is the most lucrative ways to set up your delivery system. And there's a sort of, okay, this is different than in regular Age of Steam, because regular Age of Steam, all players are kind of trying to do the same thing in that they are trying to make get their railway hooked up for some early to mid-game deliveries that'll at least let them get solvent as a company so that they're not just hemorrhaging dollars every round and hemorrhaging points as a result because I have to take more shares. Then all players are going to be trying to eventually build that smaller railway into a larger railway that can then make a big delivery. And so you may know what's going to be out at the time. You may be basing it hoping that cubes are going to come out later on. And it really is just everybody's kind of trying to do the same thing. It's just you use these auctions in this competition, and the fact that you're blocking each other on the board is really the main core gameplay experience. Whereas in Steamrollers is what it's doing is taking the building track. You can build your own private railway, and then it's just you do kind of have a little bit of a weird disconnect because there's this public board, and you never see any track on the public board. It's only a place to collect all the deliveries, meaning the cubes that need to be delivered. However, you can look at other people's railway networks and know if they're trying to go for the same thing. And that's the next level of this game is knowing okay, there's a lot of yellow and blue and there's a lot of blue and yellow. That means I could set this big thing up and then make all these big deliveries. And there's kind of a long game there. But then other players in Steamrollers can actually make a short game decision to just try to build a small spider-like network that just can make a lot of small deliveries, and you'll just eat the points right out from under your players that are playing the long game. There are those two types of ways to play the game, and they do contrast each other. There's an inner balance there. Players should be competing more if you do see a golden ticket on the board, and it just, for that reason, it has this mixture of two competing systems that are what really hooks me. It's a hook in this game, and that is hooking to new players as well. It just hooks them in. And so that's the hook of Steamrollers. Now, as an experienced player, this to me, it is clearly, as I've said, steamrolling through the hobby. And what is it, that's so fascinating about this game and seeing its huge success is that a lot of core gamers will have a certain expectation for what $50 and what a size of a box means about a game. Make no mistake about this. This game is a full gaming experience. It's short, but it's got a ton of replayability and a ton, just out of the box, it's got the same replayability that base game Age of Steam would have, only you're adding a bunch more. Specifically, there's an expansion that allows you to actually alter the map, and you'll alter it the same for all players, but that means that there's 12 different maps that you can play on, and so yes, you're playing on the same pad of paper, but you can change that pad of paper from game to game to make it so that there's different adjacencies, and it makes it more difficult to deliver certain cubes. I mean, it's building of these walls is one thing that just makes it so that this is a really replayable Age of Steam sort of a map by itself. On top of that, there are action tiles that are very supplementary to the game, but you can flip some of those so that there's an A side and a B side. And so that together with a couple of other little mini expansions, like some order tiles that you don't have to play with but certainly can, and starting powers, and black coal cubes. I mean, there's so many optional rules that it's easy to enter into this game, but you feel like you're already getting a very complete experience, and there's not that many components. I mean, you're talking about expansions that involve 6 tiles. It feels like a bunch of promos, but they're very solid. They very much do work in, and if you don't like them, then just don't play with them. That's really nice to be able to do that. Now, that's what brings this from you'd expect a roll and write that's just a smaller scope to be a $30 game, and this does bring it up to being a full cost game, but it feels like a full experience. I feel like I'm getting the hook, one of the 2 hooks in Age of Steam, which is the delivering system, works really, really well here. But you're still going to hear, like, if you're an Age of Steam fan, you hear me say I'm an Age of Steam fan, you're going to be like, okay, well, he said this is good for Age of Steam players. You're going to try playing it and feel like, you know what, the board is gone, I can't stand it. And I'm sure that Steamrollers will take a lot of negative reviews because people play it who are expecting something that's going to be more interactive along the lines of Age of Steam, but it's not that. It takes the delivery system that causes for a thrilling and strategic experience out of the game of Age of Steam, and then it adds to it a simple dice drafting Euro roll and write mechanism that makes this like the most complete gaming experience of a roll and write that I have ever seen. Usually roll and writes are like filler games. This one feels like it's somewhat of a super filler. So there's no stopping it. Like, this game will come to your group. You will play this game, and you know what? You won't be able, I mean, you'll be able to go ahead and rate it whatever you want, but like, there's going to be just at least a part of you, even if you're a heavy gamer that just resents all the attention that Steamrollers is getting, and they're from the same people who you think don't have what it takes to play Age of Steam, but they'll play this. This game is going to get people into the building track and the delivery mechanism that's in Age of Steam, and it will be easier for them to get into Age of Steam. This can be like your gateway game, and then Age of Steam is not your next step, but maybe your next step. So I think it's an absolutely fantastic experience. The artwork in the game feels very much like just like out of a children's magazine from like the 50s. I don't know. It's a like a cowboy comic from the 50s, back when they used to do like the Lone Ranger comics and stuff. It has this sort of a timeless quality to it. It's just supposed to be set in the 1860s, and it feels like it does that quite well. It certainly doesn't have like just jump out at you, grab you visuals, but it has better looking visuals than Age of Steam, especially the Rust Belt map, which is one of the most, that board is just not good looking in the least. But Steamrollers does have a certain like old-timey feel to it that feels like it could have been designed like 100 years ago, but then it has the modern mechanisms that keep me interested in it and lead me to awarding this because of how well it mixes dice placement and the options that you feel like you have on your turn. The fact that like when you take a die, most of the time you're thinking of three main actions, like, can I do anything with this die? Because building track and making deliveries are the two main things in the game. You're going to need to build track first before you can make deliveries. But then you're also going to need to, at some point, upgrade your engine. And so this engine is a way to put dice that you don't necessarily want for anything else. And so you always feel like you've got something that's at least making you progress, making you a point, making you get closer track-wise to a delivery. But there are limitations on how you build track. And then there's these contracts that you're fighting over that are worth positive points if they're one-time use things that you still have at the end of the game. They're worth negative points if they give you permanent abilities. So like, you don't really necessarily need those things. A lot of times if you're not using them, they're just worth negative points. It's a nice system though. It works quite well. And those are the things that are adding you replayability even out of the base game experience. It's all part of just a larger project here that just, this game is one of those that's just a perfect example of how you make a bunch of existing systems and what people would previously consider something that's on a lower level than their true Euro goodness, this true, a true Euro classic in the roll and write system. Nobody really thought much of roll and writes. Nobody thought that they would be anything except for like, oh, this is a family game that we all play together. I played some fantastic roll and writes that are like that, but yes, they have their limitations. Steamrollers, though, it takes the roll and write system and is like a legitimizing argument for that as a part of a larger system. And I think that Steamrollers, for that reason, deserves very much the 9 and the highest rating I can give on the Sallen Coefficient Entertainment Efficiency Scale. My personal views, I am just a huge fan of Age of Steam and really love it. And I have that judgment about it. That's like, I love Age of Steam so much, and seeing it play out in such a, what I feel to be a limiting interactivity factor, where I'm wrestling more with the game system than I am with other players, which is what Age of Steam's all about. It's like, I'm not competing with this system. I'm competing with you over those cubes in this market and this auction and the ability to go first in turn order. I mean, there's just so many things that you're really wrestling with the system and other players. And here in Steamrollers, it's all wrestling with the system. For that reason, my personal rating on it is an 8. It's actually not even a very high 8. I consider even giving it a 7 because it really is just, it doesn't have that interactivity that's my hook. But that's like a prejudice in my mind, that like I should be able to see this in a vacuum, and I definitely see the joy that it's bringing to both new gamers and experienced gamers. So I hope that my comments here on Steamrollers have given you a good idea as to why my Sallen Coefficient is higher than my own personal rating in this case. I am a part of the affected group there. But I hope that this also gives you an idea of what you're getting when you see the game of Steamrollers. Now, this game is going to steamroll. It's going to make it places. Like, if you're a core gamer and you're watching this, you probably will play this and be like, wow, that's one that really just captivated everybody, and I don't know why they love it so much. You might get that feeling. But then you'll also be appreciative that there's so much replayability out of the box, and there's like medium and hard game. There's a lot of modern touches to this. Like order tile. I mean, just you feel like you get a lot of game for what you're paying, even though piece-wise, it didn't even include pens. And it said in the rule book, pens not included. Which, like, why? That's Steamrollers. And I'm Joe Sallen. This has been a review by the Sallen Coefficient. I hope you found it useful. And check out my next video review.
Check out more from Joe right here on the YouTube page for The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly under the playlist, The Sallen Coefficient. Also, find podcast episodes of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly releasing weekly and tackling topics as well as reviewing and hyping games from many different perspectives. Also, the Longview podcast is hosted by Joe, and it covers one game for 1 to 2 hours. Find those audio programs on iTunes.